Good day, everyone, and welcome to Territories Talk. I am your co host, Shaina Smith Archer from the beautiful Virgin Islands. With me today, I have my good sister friend from Montserrat, Shirley Osborne. And we have a very interesting topic today, as always. And I myself personally am really looking forward to this because it is it's been storing up quite a bit of discussion for the past few weeks. So we felt it was important again, as part of our mission to inform and unite our overseas territories family, that we, educate ourselves on what is going on within the region that may or may not affect us, but we need to always be aware of what is happening. So with us today, we have Ambassador Dr. Clarence Henry, and he is from Antigua and Barbuda, and he is going to share with us what the CARICOM Free Movement is about as far as CARICOM's policy, and enlighten us about the recent statement or position that the Antigua government took as it relates to that. So without any further ado, I welcome Ambassador. The floor is yours.
Thank you ever so much. I am indeed grateful, delighted to be here joining you on this territories talk this morning. I'm honored, indeed honored, to join you. We have an interesting subject matter uh, for discussion. It is one which over the last 30 years or so that I've been engaged at the regional level as ambassador to CARICOM, that I have had the opportunity to represent Antigua and Barbuda. Um, it is for us an opportune time to clarify and to inform and to disseminate the information as pertaining to the full free movement of CARICOM National's decision taken last year in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, it is important that we establish what is the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. This is it, what we term as the Bible, the blueprint that guides discussions within the community on matters related to everything CARICOM. So, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas was signed by the heads of government of the Caribbean community on the 5th July 2001. In the preamble of the treaty, the heads made reference to the 89 Grand Anse Declaration, Grand Anse in Grenada, Declaration, and other decisions of the Conference of Heads. The treaty has 10 chapters, the same book that I showed. It has 10 chapters. The first 8 chapters relate to the CARICOM single market and economy. That CSME has been a project that the region has engaged with for the last 20 or so years. Globalization and international trade liberalization were the buzzwords that the region had to contend with, and therefore created an environment to insulate itself from what was happening globally. The EU model was used as a best practice to address the global challenges of the time. In particular, the commitment to deepening regional economic integration through the establishment of the CARICOM single market and economy in order to achieve sustained economic development based on international competitiveness, coordinated economic and foreign policies, functional cooperation, and enhanced trade and economic relations with third states. The CSME is not a political integration movement. I say again, The CSME is not a political integration movement. Its purpose is economic integration. Consequently, the decisions of the organs, including the Conference of Heads, on matters of the CSME must ultimately be reduced to how they improve the economic conditions of member states. The treaty also recognizes the differences in resource endowment in the levels of economic development of member states. It also acknowledges that some member states, particularly the less developed countries, were entering the CSME at a disadvantage by reason of size, structure, and vulnerability of their economies. Within the context of the treaty, the heads agreed to Articles 45, which is the movement of community nationals, in which the member states committed themselves to the goal of free movement of their nationals within the community. Additionally, Article 46, which is the movement of skilled community nationals, in which 12 categories of skills were agreed upon to move and work within the community. These categories that were agreed upon over time are university graduates, artists, musicians, sports persons, media workers, nurses, teachers, artisans with CVQs, holders of associate degrees or comparable qualifications, household domestics with a CVQ or equivalent qualification, agricultural workers, and security officers. Those are the categories that have been agreed upon and have been approved for free movement under what is called the skills regime.
Mm-hmm.
It is, ladies and gentlemen, not a perfect system. There are numerous challenges. That is, the certification for a number of skills with CVQs can be challenging to validate. And at the heart of the same revised treaty is the goal of free movement of people. Over time, successive conference of heads espouse an implementation agenda for the CSME as the main community project. However, there have been constant public criticism that the gatherings were more talk shops. So here comes the planning for the observance of the 50th anniversary of the formation of CARICOM, which was last July 4th,
Mm-hmm.
2023. Some member states felt that it was opportune at that time to have some meaningful gesture to demonstrate that we were achieving something. Hence, the idea was to have full free movement, perhaps for 6 months, and an idea for which there were hardly any takers. Lo and behold, with the pomp and fanfare in Trinidad, the idea of full free movement was placed on the table and subsequently approved by the conference. However, the necessary analytical study was not undertaken to underpin the process or proposal. The heads and co-head, and this is interesting, the heads and co-head had previously taken a decision to require deep analysis when considering the expansion of the skills regime, the categories therein. However, this was not done prior to taking this historic and impactful decision. Hence, the heads were not even given an analysis on migration patterns to see which countries may be impacted or mostly impacted. So, ladies and gentlemen, the heads decision of 2023 set in motion the Intergovernmental Task Force which was activated to negotiate the amendment to the treaty, in particular Articles 45 and 46, with Antigua and Barbuda taking an active and vocal part in those proceedings. What is our position? The question is, following the February 24 Conference of Heads meeting in Guyana, we issued a statement on 4th March to clarify our position on the movement of all CARICOM nationals to avoid any ambiguity in the public. It must be stated that throughout the meetings of the IGTF, Antigua and Barbuda signaled that it wished to maintain the use of the current skills regime, which allows us to focus on addressing our labor force demands in the local market. I affirm that we are currently implementing one of the most liberal immigration policies across the region and is considered a forerunner in the integration movement. Historically, the country has practiced an open door immigration policy while under the leadership of the father of our nation, Sir V.C. Byrd, which continued under successive Labour Party administrations until the global economic crisis brought on severe challenges, which made it impossible to continue. The CSME skills regime was then adopted as a means to allow the jurisdiction to strengthen necessary human resource capacities. The policy is pragmatic and clearly realistic to avoid dislocation of the indigenous population, protecting jobs, and to prevent the burdening of our social services, education, healthcare, etc. Colleagues, while we remain committed to the regional integration movement, we continue to balance our resources through a process of managed migration with the current skills regime. This is why we are not giving consent to the full free movement of all CARICOM nationals, as is being contemplated by other member states within CARICOM. And this is supposed to take effect March 31st, and that is Friday. However, we shall signal our readiness to move towards full free movement of all CARICOM nationals once we have determined that our country is better equipped to adequately accommodate the possible additional inflows of CARICOM nationals who may intend to reside and work in our country. Indeed, Friday will be a historic red letter day when one of the most impactful decisions would be operationalized. Countries will have to declare whether they are in or out of this new arrangement. Clarity is therefore required by all to avoid being brought before the CARICOM or Caribbean Court of Justice for not honoring the obligation of full free movement. So therefore, it is a choice to be made by all 15 member states. Once determined, there is a clear need for the CARICOM Secretary to undertake a comprehensive public education program, such as what we are doing now on this matter of full free movement skills, to avoid needless confusion. The public is in need of clarification, education with respect to this matter. And opt-out is our way, ladies and gentlemen, of avoiding a sudden increase in the movement of CARICOM nationals to our shores Antigua and Barbuda has the largest CARICOM diaspora in the community and is presently accommodating the movement of over 1,000 persons from the region annually with restricted free movement. Our Prime Minister Gaston Brown recently opined that every 4 years we have an amnesty initiative in which over 4,000 CARICOM nationals are given the opportunity to regularize their immigration status. He also stated that the principle we are working with is the fact that people with the ability to move without restriction, normally move to places where they have relatives and friends. Therefore, out of an abundance of caution, Antigua and Barbuda will opt out to avoid any potential overcapacity and attendant socio-economic consequences. Colleagues, I wish to applaud the statements of Bermuda and the BVI, which have signaled their intention to opt out of the free movement of people regime if they become full members of the community, given your geographical size and population. Your decision is understandable. In my reflections, I wonder if other OECS heads are considering following Antigua and Barbuda's position. There must be deep reflections, ladies and gentlemen, deep introspection on the immediate and long-term implications of signing the protocol on Friday to amend the treaty. The fundamental questions are: signing of this protocol on Friday benefits who? Who will it ultimately benefit? Is it politically, fiscally, and economically expedient to implement this ultimate CARICOM treaty ambition of full free movement of nationals now, or even in the next 7 years? I maintain that such a significant decision must be predicated on thorough, independent, and comprehensive impact assessment. Where have you ever heard of such a huge decision being taken without proper and adequate analysis? The abandoning of the focus on movement of skills and conflating it with the movement of all CARICOM nationals creates confusion with respect to the ultimate goal of the CSME, which is economic integration. I maintain that a proper assessment needs to be made of the budgetary implications of meeting the commitments associated with the decision. This would be different, clearly, for each member state. It cannot be one size fits all approach, not at all. Moreover, in conclusion, the decision on free movement should not be confused with the desire of some member states to augment their domestic population. The fact is that all member states in the CSME, save perhaps Haiti, is underpopulated. Therefore, one-way movement of CARICOM nationals from one member state to another would simply lead to a worsening of the situation in the sending member state. A regional migration study, which takes on board national migration strategies in each member state, is the better approach to treating with the low population issues confronting the community. 2 days ago, I heard a news item which informed that Barbados is now seeking to undertake such a focused analysis. The question then is whether this shouldn't be undertaken as a regional project before this very Friday decision Ladies and gentlemen, the time is now. The time is now. It is a monumental decision that countries, territories that are seeking full to become full members of the community need to make. I thank you, colleagues.
Okay. Dr. Henry, can I ask you a question? Let me preface this first by saying that I'm an integrationist. I really believe that the islands of the Caribbean have to work together. We really have to be pulling together to create the mass that the world needs so that we can have impact in the places that are important to us. I am also one of those people who think that CARICOM is pretty much a waste of time. CARICOM is not. The first question I want to ask you is, what really is the point of CARICOM today? Is CARICOM fulfilling its purpose? And what purpose is that? And yes, what really is the purpose of CARICOM? What is integration in CARICOM's terms today?
You have started the ball, and it's a hard ball you have thrown. But as a careful batsman,
I realize that. Yes.
Let me take my guard, and let me say this: we cannot get away from the premise that CARICOM is a useful organization, the coming together of these small states, whether large or small. All are still considered to be small, relatively small in the global context. The treaty, when we signed and it came into being in 1973, there were clear goals. It creates the opportunity of functional cooperation, as I alluded to. There are common foreign policy approaches. There are clear, useful rationale why we can confront global challenges collectively, and indeed we utilize it as a platform so to do. By having the 15 members, you would have many other global strong countries looking up to CARICOM, as opposed to one of our territories, one of our member states speaking on its own volition. They would have to take note of the bloc, and international relations are all about how best you can impact and be relevant, whether in a community or whether at international forums or fora. So CARICOM is relevant. It has its place. We meet at different meetings, whether it's meetings of the organs, and there's numerous organs of the community. You have the Council for Trade and Economic Development, COTED, that meets roughly twice annually. And sometimes we meet in special sessions. You also have the second highest organ of the community, which is the Community Council of Ministers, which sets the agenda for heads. And then you have the Conference of Heads, where you have meetings, roughly about 7 meetings in any year, 2 face-to-face, and a number.
I don't want to interrupt you, but that's exactly the point. That's what people are saying about CARICOM. There are a lot of meetings, but much doesn't show up. And if you talk, for example, and I want to come to the integration issue, the movement. And we're going to get to that immediately. In just one thing I want to clarify before we go. Because the ultimate goal of integration is what? If it's not political integration, then what is it?
As I've said.
Let me just say though, however, because you
have to allow.
I know.
We just breathe in and breathe out. Allow. because we are speaking to those who are not so familiar. So I'm deliberately
After
taking
50
my time.
years,
So I
after 50 years.
Yes, we will get there, my dear. Let all ideas contend. We will get there. Let us not rush it, but let me explain. Um, the purpose of the integration arrangement was established many years
Mhm.
before our time, long, long years ago, before you had the federation coming up, long before my time and your time, as explained. The countries felt that it was indeed desirous and desirable to engage and to have a platform to confront external challenges and even internal challenges. As a bloc, you have the European Union. The European Union treats with a number of challenges as a bloc. That's why they signed on to it. There's same relation here within CARICOM. We sign on to meet our external challenges and some say internal challenges as well. The meetings are necessary because you can only treat with challenges through discussion. You cannot have a prime minister or two or three in their own space, in their own capitals, determining policy for the rest of the region. So heads and other organs where representatives of member states meet together to discuss and debate issues and then arrive at a decision that all can feel comfortable with. That's the nature of blocks.
Yeah.
The CARICOM is a block of community countries. We are all suffering. So we meet around the table for debate, discussion, and to arrive at mutually beneficial decisions. So that is how I can answer you, Shirley.
But you're saying, sir, that in this particular case, integration, it wasn't fully thought out. The decision was made last year, but it wasn't fully thought out. You just
So now we move now to this particular decision. As I said, on decisions prior to agreement, they are brought before the heads. Some and the majority decisions work their way through the different organs of the community up to the heads. The heads are the ultimate, at the pinnacle of the decision making in CARICOM. So, with respect to this, it traveled. As I said, some thought that to observe the 50th anniversary celebrations, it would be necessary to have some symbolic occasion to suggest and to give people the feeling and something to show, to demonstrate to them that CARICOM is indeed moving the dial to something more impactful. And it was carried. It's not the first time free movement was being discussed. Ultimately, as mentioned within the context of the treaty, Articles 46 and 45, particularly 45, mentions about the goal of free movement. So the heads were thinking about arriving at that goal at some point in the future. This was
okay.
since 89. So we are now, heads today thought that we have arrived at the juncture in history that we must bring this thing to fruition. Conversely, I have opined that before we take such impactful decision, it ought to have been guided by an empirical analysis. Some believe that analysis on this occasion ought not to be rendered or even thought of or even pursued. We disagree with that, because once you're establishing government policies, it has to be predicated on sound empirical analysis. And one may also say risk analysis. How many of us undertake such analysis?
That's the point. That's the point.
Well,
You
that
have, within the context of our partners in the European Union, in the US, before they take a decision, proper analysis is undertaken. And we have, here in Antigua and Barbuda, we have always conducted ourselves in a proper manner through empirical analysis, through assessment. We just don't today go to cabinet and say, look, let us undertake that. And we make it government policy. Policies must be predicated on sound fact, data analysis. So
We agree with you, and we agree with you that time. And I agree with the position Antigua and Barbuda is taking, that it needs to be thoroughly discussed. I think we all agree on that. So that's not the issue. The issue is, I think, for Caribbean people, the people on the street who don't understand all of these because they don't have the information, is what's the point of all of this? Why would we need people to come and go? If I want a job in Jamaica, I apply and I go. Okay, if I want a job in the US, I can apply and go. You have, there are mechanisms for this to happen all the time. But I think the confusion for most people is, where are we going with this? And, if you talk about, it's not a political integration, but then you have issues like voting, because when you move, you're required to vote. There was a case brought by some Caribbean nationals in Barbados last election before the last, where they were not allowed to vote, and the court said they must be allowed. So that's what I'm talking about. Because when people move, migration occurs because people are moving from one place to another because they don't have what they want. They can't find it where they are. The opportunities or the circumstances for them, the promise is better somewhere else. So my question about integration, about the migration, is, what are we looking for in our individual territories, so that when we come together, we're solid? Because at the beginning of when the federation was started, one of the issues that Jamaica, Trinidad, and Guyana and so on had, the bigger countries had, but Jamaica and Trinidad, most particularly, I think, and Barbados, was that they would have to carry the smaller countries, including Montserrat and Antigua and so on, right? So now it's a little bit reversed, shall we say? But the principles still are the same. People are moving to find what they want. But what are we doing to ensure that, what is CARICOM doing to support individual territories so that this movement is not forced? It's not that you have to go. It's because, I really like BVI and I want to go, work in BVI because I love sailing and boating and it's really better there. It's not because in Guyana things are really so bad. What's CARICOM doing? That's my challenge with CARICOM, to be honest. That's my biggest problem.
Yeah. So I answer you this way. I have always long maintained that when we go to CARICOM meetings or organs of the community engagements, that we have to be frank, very clear as to the interests of our own territory, our own country, and bring it to bear around the table, and not sit silent and listen to the others and be the takers of other ideas, but we put on the table our own thoughts and not power. We have always been very vocal. That is how I was raised up, to be very clear and not be takers of other people's thoughts, but to share your own thoughts. You're right. You're right in terms of when people move, they move with their own value system, their norms, and their cultural values. And so care must be taken always as to how we treat with inward migration. we are small, and we are not on the same geographical size as Trinidad, Jamaica, Barbados, or Guyana. Those coincidentally are the MDCs, the more developed countries within CARICOM, the more wealthy, the more endowed. If you recall, I did mention about the less developed countries, which speak to the CS member states. We are the smaller of the small within CARICOM. So we have to always ponder, always analyze what is in this thing for us. Is it truly something that this country or your country can undertake, can facilitate? One of the things, I was speaking on a program in Jamaica quite recently, and a distinguished individual mentioned, oh, why these territories don't want to embrace this free movement for all. It is so long, and it's time for us to look the other way and to allow. But we know the history. We can appreciate the challenges that come with an open door policy. You have, as I said, when people move, they move with their own value systems, and you end up with a change in your own cultural nuances. And so one has to be very careful. So, my sister, that's why representation at the highest level is key. And to bring to bear at the regional table, to speak clearly, to advocate on behalf of your own national interests, never to cower, never to shy away from a debate, and never to just sit in silence while the others pontificate their national positions. And sometimes the MDCs want OECS or LDCs to do that in terms of shying away and cowering. But not Antigua and Barbuda. We have constantly been pounding the table to ensure that people listen and people don't take us for granted. We have demonstrated that within the context of the IGTF several meetings. We have demonstrated at the Conference of Heads, where our Prime Minister has been very careful and straightforward in his articulations on all matters, on all agenda items that we have an interest in. On this particular free movement matter, we spoke and made it clear our position at the 7 or 8 IGTF meetings. We even went further. We took the matter to the Community Council of Ministers. We took it to the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on the CSME. So it had gone through several chambers or organs or meetings of the community. So the opportunity must be taken at all times to restate. And the Shinique Myrie case that was referenced is an important fact and underpinning as to how countries, the representation must behave or carry out its mandate, is to ensure that whenever we engage at the regional level, that the notes, the records of meetings are accurately reflected, so that if matters if there's a challenge and matters have to go to the CCJ, the truth, the records will bear witness to what we said or our intentions. So, my dear, there you have it. That's how I
Dr.
can.
Henry.
Yes, my dear.
Yes. So, real quick, I need to pause and just say thank you to our media partners, Cayman Mall Road Facebook page, Radio Turks and Caicos, Montserrat ZJB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio FN 90.9, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Sabre PJFE FM 93.9, and Barbados's CBC Channel 8 all carry our program. We also want to say welcome to all the persons that are tuning in from Antigua today. We saw a few of them making comments. And as far as I believe Suriname. So thank you for all that have tuned in and making your contributions. Real quick though, we need Dr. Henry, we need to get into, helping persons understand in terms of one of the interesting things you said is in terms of the analysis of what the impacts of migration have been, whether it's on the larger countries or small states such as Antigua or even the Virgin Islands. What are some of the things in terms of, I guess, daily life that you have seen changed or shifted as a result of the migration that would have been a result of trying to establish this single market and economy? And which is what the impetus, I'm understanding based on your explanations, why we were even considering the free movement of people in the first instance. So what are some of those things that you can probably share so that persons can understand further? What has changed? Migration is something that is time immemorial. However, it does have impacts, and I think sometimes we take them for granted, apart from the fact that, yes, you need to grow your economy and population growth is a part of that. Sometimes it's migrated in versus, natural birth rate.
Well, let me reaffirm that Article 45 within the treaty, which is entitled Movement of Community Nationals, states, member states commit themselves to the goal of free movement of their nationals within the community. Mm-hmm. So the heads agreed to this goal, established at Grand Anse since '89, and they signed it in 2001. So there has always been the goal of free movement. What has happened in the intervening period between 2001 to present has been the establishment and elaboration of the skills regime, which is, like some would say, halfway done, halfway achieved. Mm-hmm. Wherein which countries were authorized to allow necessary skills, and I've listed the categories, about 12 of them. We have derogations onto teachers and nurses, and they are indefinite. But so that is what we and the rest of the region were honoring, the skills regime, until last year, when member states, not all, a few, came to the table when planning to observe the 50th anniversary of CARICOM, the formation of CARICOM. Some member states thought that it would be a meaningful thing to have full free movement, to fulfill this dream, this ambition of our forefathers and those who were participating in the revised treaty, to fulfill this long-term ambition. Others, like us, at the time we felt that it was premature, but and we stated it at that heads meeting that the concerns of Antigua and Barbuda must be considered, and it is reflected in the heads decision that concerns of member states must be considered in treating with the amendments to the Treaty of Chagarams with respect to the free movement of all. So, and that's why we advocated, as I have said, since we started. That's why we took that position. So, free movement has its genesis way back, and perhaps I may not be speaking out of turn by saying that long years ago, the forefathers felt that it would be the ideal position that one day the region will come together to allow people to move from Kingston to St. John's, to Bridgetown, to Port of Spain, to Georgetown, freely across borders. But the question is, who makes that determination? Is it done on a whim or a fancy, or is it predicated through proper study, analysis, to ensure that there are no negative implications in so doing? And so, upon reflection, these are the things that we have said that ought to have been treated with. Again, we are saying that the skills regime, it's not perfect. There are a lot of things that we need to still address, and perhaps we will now have the opportunity so to do. The meeting on Friday of heads, where there will be a discussion where the output of the IGTF, which one would say have completed its work, and the LAC, that is the Legal Affairs Committee, will present its report to the heads. The heads will either adopt, and countries then would need to inform that they are signing on to this full free movement protocol, or they agree to suspend for 3 or 7 years its implementation of that particular obligation. It is critical for member states to make this determination on Friday, because if they do not signal what they have to do or want to do on that occasion, it simply means that they can be placing themselves in a position to be challenged by another member state of the community, or by a citizen who would have applied, who would have shown up at the border. And if a member state deny them the rights that would be contingent on this protocol, then the CCJ will have additional work, and more lawyers within the region will have work. So are we creating work for the lawyers, additional work for the lawyers, or the countries, if they don't signal come Friday what they intend to do? Are they requesting a derogation, or are they requesting an opt-out we say out and declare. Opt out and declare is what Antigua and Barbuda will be doing. We opting out of that until we, through the cabinet, through our parliament, have made a decision as to it is the time, somewhere down in the future, it is time for us. We have the capacity. We are able to embrace this new full free movement regime.
Okay. All right. Shirley, you had any other points to raise? We're going to start to wrap up in a few.
I'm still baffled by how we got to, how CARICOM got to, you have to agree by such and such a date, when they haven't done the work within the individual territories to ensure that everybody is ready. And I'm also confused that the heads are ignoring, to my mind, ignoring the realization that people want to move because they want to move, not because they have to move. So the economic situations in each individual territory need to be addressed before we can get to all of these things. And we're talking, I made a note here about, I don't think it makes sense today that we're still talking amongst ourselves about more developed and less developed countries. I don't think it is possible to say that Jamaica is more developed than Antigua, right?
Well, you see, it is contained in the treaty, and everything written in the treaty establishes the rules of the game, the rules of our work. So we have to go by what is written here.
Henry, maybe we need to go back to basics a little bit, because the situation 50 years ago is very different to what it is now. Even in terms of technology and so on, the opportunities and resources that are available. So perhaps what we need to do is kind of look at, that's where we were when we made these changes. Things have changed. So if there are not, maybe there clearly are some things we need to say, hold up a minute, let's check back, let's go back. Because I take the point, and it is really important to places like Montserrat and Antigua and BVI and so on, when you have large influxes of other people. They are our people in many respects, but they have a whole continent coming, it changes the dynamics, which is neither good nor bad. We're not discussing that. The point is that's what happens. And that only happens. People only move in these large amounts when things are bad where they are. People want to stay home most.
Additionally, remember, Shirley, remember there are pull factors. They are driven by what they see across the border,
which is not at home. So, and I'm talking from, I can talk for Montserrat right now, for example. We had to do a lot of migration because things were so bad in Montserrat, okay? So, and that was driven by the volcano and all that. But there are other incidents, there are other political, social, economic issues in the individual countries which are not being addressed. And we're not going to talk about Guyana today, but Guyana is coming up big time nowadays. And that's the thing that has to be discussed. Haiti is still a problem, and CARICOM is really, seriously not helping Haiti much. But if we don't do that, the issue of migration is going to continue to be a problem. I have family in Antigua, we have family in BVI. We like that we move around. But we want to do it because you want to, Dr. Henry, because you want to, not because we supposed to.
Let me join you, but at the same time, make a clarification. It is not, Haiti will not be a part of this full free movement regime. Let us be clear on that. They will not be a part of that. The population size and, of course, the turmoil now in Haiti, it will take a number of years. Yes, a number of years to rectify the situation there. So, but you're absolutely correct. One particular issue that must be also placed on the table, the land size. We don't have unlimited land resources, and most times when people move, they would want to buy and have a little piece of where they're moving to. What will happen to the indigenous population? We wouldn't have or be given the chance, or our kids have the chance to purchase land. So the implications are wide and far reaching. And hence, we are of the premise that careful analysis must always guide, must always lead us to make sound policy decision. And the opportunity still exists for heads, heads to make a declaration as to what is in their best interest. The records would show that the member states did agree to this. But as you said, that was time past. This is time now moving forward. So today or on Friday, the opportunity will be given for each head to say what they can accept and what they cannot, what is realistic and what is futuristic. So we have already declared what we can accept and what we cannot. It is left for others to be bold, to to be to be clear, and to be forthright in their submission on this matter. But as I said before, as we started, everybody is sovereign. At the table of CARICOM, everyone is sovereign.
Yeah,
So
that's the problem.
It's interesting, when we think about the bigger scheme of the region, I always think about what was the motivation behind of the European Union and why the countries in the Europe continent basically came together. And I think, the premise of CARICOM came from a positive place, and it is something I don't think they tell enough of their stories nationally, because there are, instances, for example, when I went and looked at the communique, ambassador, that came out of the 46th head of government meeting, where, the conversations, whether it was around the environment, food and nutrition security, there's a lot of good work that is happening. I agree. Yeah, and I agree with Shirley in terms of things are taking too long, but because it's so many member states and trying to get
yes,
consensus and agreement
yes,
is probably the biggest hurdle, I would say, that has to be surmounted. But if we are
so
able to accomplish a lot of these things that we have set out as goals, it can't do anything but strengthen the union. But one of the
yes,
takeaways I want our audience to make sure that they understand is that it has to be something that, again, starting from the ground level in terms of, from the local states that are part of the Caribbean community, that everybody understands that we have to pull, or as we say here in the Virgin Islands, in the same direction. Otherwise, that
yes,
we're just going to be spinning around in the water, because we're not able to gain the momentum that we need. So it's something where I think, the current situation is going to definitely be a teachable moment to help us to understand, is CARICOM of benefit to the region, to us here nationally, and how do
correct.
we make it such that we do benefit individually and collectively? Because there's always those internal fights in the European Union, same way, where the bigger economies is how I would now compare us, rather than saying less developed or more developed, because if Antigua and the Virgin Islands were still less developed, we wouldn't have the levels of migration we see, because our economies have grown. So that in itself says that those aspects of the treaty do need to probably get a little update, in addition to saying that this was the goal, but again, doing the analysis, gathering the information to help us understand now what the policy directions need to be, and not just, we're stuck in this is what we had decided from 50 years ago, so we have to accomplish this without any type of updating in our thinking, so
Yes,
to
yeah,
speak, as far as it relates to that. So I think today was a very hopefully a helpful conversation with persons, trying to understand again what is the purpose of these regional organizations, whether it's CARICOM or OECS, and on a national level that we hope to have more educational information. I know for me, I'm going to be reaching out in another forum to make sure that all leadership explains to us, even as an associate member, because Montserrat was bold and they became a full member from the jump. And again, someone actually texted me and was asking why we don't have full membership. And I was saying to them that because we're a British territory, the UK has to grant permission. So as we're seeing now with Bermuda, they ask for permission to pursue it. And therefore, they have to sit down and now go through the process. And anybody else, any of the other OTs would have to do similar. So it is something, again, we're going to continue to have this conversation more on our forum here. And we really want to thank you for being a part of the conversation today. Any closing words?
Well, I wish to express my appreciation for this invitation. It's a necessary part of what I deem as important, the dissemination of accurate, precise information on the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, the usefulness of the integration movement of CARICOM by and large, and at the same time, how we as OECS LDCs can find our place within the CARICOM. The late Prime Minister of Barbados, Orinata, did author a study which looked towards the integration of the OECS into CARICOM. We are still searching to see how best CARICOM as a bloc can fully embrace the output from that study. We are committed to being a part of CARICOM, but there has to be a continued dialogue and certainly dissemination of information with respect to all things CARICOM. I am grateful for the opportunity given to me by Prime Minister Gaston Brown to serve as ambassador to CARICOM. I am delighted to engage my colleagues from time to time at the various organs of the community. It is a delight and joy just to hear both, even the criticism, because therein lies the opportunity to clarify. I thank you for having me.
All right.
For being on, sir.
Thank you again for being here. We hope we can reach out to you as post-decision on Friday, because again, the day is going to happen this week, and I'm sure it will stimulate even more discussion on this topic. But that is what is important. Again, like you're saying, let's have the conversations, let's understand what is before us, and then from there we can make clear decisions on what is next. Shirley, you'd like to thank our media partners and close us off?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Henry. I'm saying Dr. Archer. Thank you. It's a good conversation. I look forward to talking to you some more about this. Antigua and Montserrat have some conversations, and that whole point you talked about OECS as a block and so on. There's stuff that needs to be done within the OECS too, and they've made some steps, but just like CARICOM, everything takes forever. So anyway, thank you very much for being on. Thank you to everybody who's listened and who has commented. Sorry, we couldn't get to the questions. This was such intense debate. We couldn't get to your questions, but we noticed them. And as we go forward with the conversations later on and other discussions on this matter, we will be sure to bring them to our guests' attention. Thank you to our media partners. I'm not seeing the scroll here, but ZJB in the BVI, in Barbados, in Cayman, in Bermuda, in Antigua, here we are, Cayman Mall Road, Radio TCI, Turks and Caicos, Montserrat ZGB Radio, Virgin Islands CBN Radio, FM 90.99, Bermuda's Channel 82, Radio Sabre, PJFE FM 93.9, and Barbados CBC Channel 8. Thank you all very, very much. Look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Until next time.
Until.
Mhm.